How a Plant Grows, from Look About You, Book 3, by Thomas W. Hoare, taken from Gutenberg Project, read by Saifan. Every day, the boys watched their buds and seeds bursting into life. It was slow work, but as winter passed slowly away and they were able to go out for walks more often, they had much to amuse them. They brought home all sorts of curious things, and soon had quite a host of living things to watch. 3 weeks passed before the horse chestnut buds showed any signs of opening. By this time, they had swelled out very much. First, the sticky scales moved apart, then folded themselves backwards out of the way, and at last fell off altogether. This moving apart of the scales was caused by the shoot or branch inside the bud, which was growing rapidly. Before the scales fell off, it had burst its way through them. It was now a large mass of thick leaves all folded together and covered all over with a sort of wool. Soon, these thick leaves moved apart. The woolly covering came off, and what a month ago was a little woolly body, so tiny that it had to be picked apart with a needle, was now a large stout branch, smooth and green, and bearing beautiful broad leaves. Some of the buds brought forth small clusters of little green balls. These the boys at first thought they were berries, but they afterward found out that they were flowers. After all the buds had quite opened out, they began slowly to wither. Uncle George told them the reason of this. It was because the branch had been cut away from the mother tree, which drew its food from the soil and air. The growing buds had used up all the sap which the cut branch contained. But by the time their twigs had withered, the buds outside had begun to open, for spring was now at hand. The hedges were becoming greener every day. The birds were heard singing in the woods, and little green shoots were springing up everywhere underfoot. Frank and Tom brought home opening buds of all kinds, and watched the hedges and trees as they walked daily to school. 2 of the bean seeds were sawdust every second or third. The boys were able to see exactly grows from the seeds. First, the seed swells out, then the skin bursts, and the little plant in between the 2 masses of plant food begins to grow. The root always grows down straight. The little shoot always grows upwards. After the root has grown about an inch, it begins to branch, and in about 2 weeks, these branch roots are researching the soil for food all around the main root. The shoot, meanwhile, is growing in length and thickness. It remains folded up until it reaches the air and light. Then its leaves open out and turn from a creamy color to bright green. 1 small box of seeds was placed in a dark cupboard. These beans grew much more quickly than those grown in light. But they were pale, lank, and sickly. They never turned green. From this the boys learned that the green color of leaves and stem is due to the action of light. Uncle George took a few grains of wheat and placed them upon wet blotting paper. A tumbler turned upside down was placed over them. In a few days, the children saw that a few small roots had grown out from the end of each grain. When these roots had grown to about half an inch in length, great tufts of long slender hairs sprang out all around them near their tips. These, their uncle told them, were root hairs. The root hairs of a plant are so fine that they are always torn off when we dig or pull a plant out of the ground. It is by means of these slender root hairs that the plant is able to suck water out of the soil. And this water always contains a very little plant food in it. The boys noticed that the wheat grain did not sprout in the same way as the bean seed. Instead of 1 stout little root, 3 usually came out. The tiny shoots seemed to grow from the outside of the grain, and 2 large masses of plant food were missing. Some wheat seeds were soaked and cut down the middle. With the aid of the glass, the boys saw that in the wheat seed, the baby plant is attached to 1 large mass of plant food, made up of flour with an outside layer of bran. Their uncle then told them that all the flowering plants in the world are of 2 or great families, namely, those whose seeds have only 1 food store, like wheat grain, and those whose seeds have 2, like the bean. The end.